You need visionaries, somebody who can see what the potential is. And somebody who can see that potential, you build from there. The idea is that it permeates out. And you bring in the district level folks first who can help build that vision for everybody. And then slowly, you bring it to your principals, you bring it to your APs, and you make that decision about when it happens and when do I bring in family members and when do I bring in community members. That's the goal, is to just keep bringing in and layering in more people who can see CTE and K-12 belong together.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is connecting literacy to your career exploration process through the great platform called Beable. Joining us today is Susan Gertler of Beable. Susan is the Chief Academic Officer from Beable. She started out as a clinical psychologist and heavily involved in education, but then moved herself into working with a platform called Achieve 3000, and now is with Beable, and has been doing this work for nearly 20 years. Beable is a next generation life-ready literacy platform. It's the only platform that links students' personal interests and aspirations to literacy growth, personal growth, and career exploration, along with having academic rigor. By automatically providing just right content and scaffolds at each learner's reading level, Beable delivers Lexile growth 5 times expected annual growth, while assuring equity for all. By accelerating literacy for future readiness, Beable puts students on the personalized path to academic success and career opportunity. Susan, welcome and thank you for joining. I'm sorry I kind of butchered that at the beginning. But I can guarantee you we're going to get to some good stuff around the great platform of Beable. So how are things going? How's the year going for you? I'm sure it's a little different than us in education, where we start out in September. It's kind of like a season for us. We start in September and we kind of move through the year. What's it like for you? How are things been going?
Things are great. Excellent year. But I would say that we're similar to you in some ways. Because when you're busy, we're busy. So at the start of the year, we're out there launching. Our implementation team is out there in the field, launching teachers, launching students, making sure everybody has what they need to get started quickly. Because literacy acceleration has to start from day one, and we don't want to lose a day.
Yeah, I can imagine, and that's one of the things that's really attracted me to my career, and what I really like about it is kind of like a season. It's a little slower in the summer for me. But same as you, the work really kicks off in September, and it doesn't really slow down for myself with a lot of the work that I'm doing. You know, I want to mention that I stumbled across Beable through David Miyashiro from Cajon Valley. And I know history here, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a little bit, but I do know that they're doing some phenomenal work, and Beable is a big part of that in regards to it. So yeah, I'm really excited to give that history a little bit and talk more in depth about Beable and some of the things that are happening. But to get started, why don't we do this? Tell me a little bit about your journey. You know, how did you get where you're at right now?
So as you said, I started out in clinical psych, and I was doubling up with education, really looking to think about how I could help kids the most, and partnered with Saki Dodelson 25 years ago, was it, in a venture called Achieve 3000, which is all about bringing literacy, differentiated instruction. We were the first to bring differentiated learning into the classroom, and web-based, so that every student could get content at their precise level, make sure that they had equitable access to content. So that was the starting point. Achieve 3000, we were there for about 18 years until we made the decision to take a break, and our thought was it was going to be a permanent break, and we were going to kind of relax. Saki was going to the beach, I was going to the mountains, and we were each kind of going our own way.
Yeah.
But then we just realized that there was still a big need, and the work wasn't done. Kids were still there. There were still haves and have-nots, and we wanted to make sure that we helped to overcome the gap that seemed to be growing instead of receding. So we came back, and that's when we started Beable. So we came out, Beable, we started, probably released during the pandemic, was our release of Beable.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And again, I thank David for connecting me with Beable and Holly and a few others that I've connected with. And even last year we did a webinar on it. I was really amazed, at the movement, right? And it aligned itself really nicely with the work that I do, around helping schools kind of shift that mindset a little bit and move towards a more of a career community life readiness approach in their school systems. And which is right. I mean, we look at this, which is ideally what we need to have going on, but we can't turn our backs, obviously, with literacy, with reading and math and writing and some of those things. But to spark students' interests is something that we really need to look at. I'm curious here. Obviously, we're seeing a big shift in our educational system. Again, Cajon Valley is a great example of that. Tell me why you think there's a need for that shift.
Well, I think that there's a big shift in the job market, and that's really what's making it happen, right? If you look over the past 20 or so years, if you look at the Lexile, the reading requirements for different careers, entry-level positions for those careers, it's shifted. So, probably, I mean, if you think about an electrician, just as an example, probably 20 years ago, the Lexile requirements about 800 Lexile level. Today, if you look at it, it's more like 1200 Lexile level. So you're talking about a huge jump in the literacy demands
Wow.
of careers today, blue collar jobs, so that what used to be an option for kids who were struggling readers who had very low literacy skills, those are no longer options for them. So we're limiting the options that students have, and we have to find some way to make sure that our kids who are struggling readers, who are not graduating from school because they don't have the skills that they need, we have a responsibility to make sure that we prepare them for the job market today.
Yeah, in the marriage between literacy and a career exploration process is what you guys hit that home run with, which is really, really cool.
Right.
And because a lot of the conversation that I've had with educators is we can't turn our back on, the things that our students need to have. Those technical type skills are greatly needed. Um, how do where do you stand in regards to that shift with the career aspect of it? Where do you see the need for that? Because it is a marriage between literacy, right? And also the RIASEC and the Hollins Code, which is a big component of it, but also the career exploration. Where do you stand with, yeah, we need that taking place in our educational system also?
Absolutely. I mean, and the really big shift that has to happen is that needs to take place starting in kindergarten. You don't have to start in high school thinking about, well, where do I see myself and what types of careers do I think I should be doing? It's too late, right? We need to start down in kindergarten helping kids to begin to understand, well, what are my work-related interests? And you don't necessarily call them that in kindergarten, but
Right.
what do I like to do is that critical question. And it may change over time, and you want it to change over time. And as they evolve, their interests can evolve. And key is just making sure that they always have that underlying skill set to pursue the interests that they have. And ultimately, that will connect to a workplace environment that they like. And that's really what RIASEC is all about, right? Helping kids to, through this inventory, begin to understand what type of environment do I see myself working in, and where will I be happiest? Because happiness is all about the job satisfaction that you're going to need. So if you're interested in what you're doing and you like to pursue it, then you will be happy there and you will have great job satisfaction. And that's our ultimate goal for every kid.
Yeah. Wow. I really enjoy how you say that. And quite honestly, Susan, maybe you could join me in a few trips that I make out to schools, because I do get a little pushback sometimes. Really, we're going to start with career readiness at the kindergarten, first, second, third grade level.
Yeah.
The way you articulated that made a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit, what do you think we can do, and maybe Beable's doing this, that we can get others to see this need?
I think it's a challenge because you're asking people to do something that they're not necessarily comfortable with. They haven't done it before. And it's not part of what they have learned to do. In the same way that people who are asked to teach literacy who are not necessarily trained in teaching literacy, they give you pushback because they're not literacy teachers. So anytime that you put something in somebody's hands that's foreign to them, you should expect some level of pushback. And really for us, it's about making sure, number one, they see the benefit, not only the benefit to the kids, which is the most important thing, but also the benefit to themselves. Like if you talk to teachers now who have RIASEC at the core of their classroom and all of their kids know their RIASEC codes, their 3-letter codes, and all of their kids are engaged in learning because they have a sense of self and an awareness of what they're most interested in, that changes what takes place in the classroom. And they can feel that, they can see that and recognize that that's going to change how much kids are going to give them pushback for learning. And that understanding that change is what will hook people in. That, oh, my kids are going to be connected to learning now. What more do we want? That's what we want from our kids.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's as you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording. We were talking about sometimes teachers don't even know what that looks like sometimes, right? Yeah. Or they don't see it happen as often as it can. And as we talked. And again, going back to Cajon Valley, you see that on a day-to-day basis in every single classroom. So it's really, really cool.
That motivation, that engagement from students is what will hook your teachers. But at the same time, you have to recognize that this is a new language for them. RIASEC is a language. Yeah. And teachers need to be comfortable with that language before they introduce it to their kids. Right. So it's a process, and you shouldn't expect that on day 2, they'll learn it on day 1, on day 2, they'll bring it into their classroom. There's a learning curve that takes place, and everybody has to be prepared for that. So I think that's part of the rollout of something like this, is you really have to think through what is that rollout process going to look like in my district.
Yeah, you say that really well. Again, in the work that I've been doing, I see that. It's I like how you say and use the word process, because as I work with educators and teachers, a lot of the time what I'll get is that I call it A to Z thinking, and we're conditioned for that. And that's kind of how we present our classroom sometimes. It's tell me what I need to know and let me go do it, And with our students, it's tell them what they need to know, let them practice. And then we sometimes will, obviously we get to the assessment part of that. But with the process itself, there's some uncomfortable times, when you shift what the inside of a classroom is going to look like and how it's going to look, and those processes, it does take some time. So I like how you say that. Let's talk a little bit about the what and what it kind of looks like. What does this look like? What does the connected process of careers in classrooms kind of in general? I know Beable does a great job and offers a solution to this to a point, but go a little deeper. What does the inside of that classroom look like when we see that career connected process happening?
So ultimately, I think it's a very organic process, right? You have a fluidity that's taking place where you're teaching whatever it is that you're required to teach, and career connected literacy becomes part of that. The discussions that happen, the connections that you make to literacy, to career opportunities when you're talking about math or when you're talking about science or social studies, you can make those connections in a very fluid way. And also helping to kind of bring in the community so that community members can explain and share with students how it is that their careers play out in the real world and what the skills are that they actually need for the careers that they take on. All of that is part of what you'll see in a career-connected classroom.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what does that look like in regards to that community connection? And you kind of answered it there. So there is a connectedness to your community, business sector, organizations. Tell us a little more what that does look like.
So it very much will vary depending on how much networking the district is able to do, or the principal level, school level folks are able to do to bring the community in. At the start, you want to be able to have family members, right? Because family are going to drive success. And every family member works in some capacity or another. So you want to create this culture where there is value in all work and respect for all work. And you bring in family members to talk about their work. We call it a Meet a Pro, where they're able to come in and they're able to meet with kids, and kids can interview them and talk to them. And through that, you create a whole network of people who all of them can take RIASEC. Family members can take RIASEC within Beable. So everybody has a code. Anybody in the district can take it. So you can walk around and everybody knows their code and can talk about their code. And then you have school community, and the school community, how many jobs are there in a school district? I mean, so many across the entire district that kids can learn about just from the school community, that they can have that opportunity to meet those pros. And then you take it out to the next level, which is the community level, where let's go out, let's understand locally what are the jobs that we have. And it's a partnership, because the community also needs to know where kids are headed. And kids need to know where they can find jobs within the community. So we need to build that partnership so that there's not as much of a gap between when kids graduate and when they start a career. And I think that's the gap that exists, is that we're not speaking the same language. So if you want kids to be able to seamlessly move from the classroom into a career opportunity, then we have to be speaking the same language.
Right.
And that's what RIASEC does.
Right. Wow, that's super cool. I never even thought, and we have it right in front of us, as far as our students and their parents, that offer that connection automatically right there. Let's dive into Beable here, and let's talk more about it. What is it? How does it help with this process?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So Beable is all about, you described it, where it's all about this multi-dimensional platform where it's not just about literacy skills, but at the core of it is making sure kids have the literacy skills to do anything that they're interested in doing. But it's also about career exploration. It's about personal growth and well-being. And it's about making sure that we don't sacrifice the academic rigor, right? Because we can't let kids fall through the cracks because they're struggling readers. So the platform is designed to work on all of these simultaneously. And students will come in, and the idea is that through RIASEC, they get to know themselves better. It's all about interest-based learning, that students are able to come in, they take RIASEC, they know their 3-letter code, they're able to explore careers based on their personal interest, based on their code. But then there's the academic side of make sure you have the literacy skills that you need. So what we're doing through RIASEC is building motivation. You know exactly where you are. You take a Lexile assessment, you know exactly where you are from a literacy perspective. And then you take RIASEC and you select your careers, and you know the Lexile requirements of those careers. And what Beable does is it allows you to shift from teachers directing your learning to this becoming a mission of me. This is my mission. My mission is I want to be this. And I understand that the reading requirements are this, and that I have to grow X in order to reach those requirements. But I can do that. And I know that I have the capability of doing that. And Beable is set up around this framework of get to know me, find my why, create my path, where we have a learner record for every student. We know everything about them, what their academic gaps may be, but also what their goals and dreams are. And then we allow them to explore, we allow them to shift to that mission of me, and then Beable sets up a pathway for them. And it's an individual pathway for every student. So it's how many reading sessions do you need over the course of the year to overcome your gap? What extra scaffolds do you need to have in place so that you can build your reading comprehension skills? And what personalized readings do you want to do based on your interests versus what are the academic requirements that you have? And then we deliver students lessons at their precise Lexile level. We do everything at 10 different Lexile levels, ranging from 200 Lexile to a 1300 Lexile level. We do it in English, we do it in Spanish, and they have supports in over 200 different languages. And it's just making sure that everything is accessible.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I've seen it, and I love the platform, the look itself. It's engaging just from that I'll call it avatar, but I'm not sure if I'm nailing that right. But just the different levels, the different the picture of the diagram,
the
community.
Yeah.
I really think it's pretty cool. It's attractive to kids, and I love how you scaffolded it from elementary to middle school to high school, where it hits, the interest level at that age group too. Tell us a little bit more about the RIASEC, the Hollins Code. I'm sure we got people that are listening that maybe don't know enough about that. Can you go a little further in that?
Yeah, sure. So RISEC is a career interest inventory, and it helps kids to identify their work-related interests. It's based on the idea that people perform best in an environment that matches their interests. So the result of the RISEC is a three-letter code. You'll walk away with your three-letter code. RISEC stands for realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional.
Yep.
And you will get some combination of a three-letter code from the RIASEC letters. And then the system is going to help build out suggested pathways for you or work environments that would align to your specific interests. And through this, it helps to build an awareness of who you are, but it also helps to build a confidence level. You talk about Cajon Valley. You go to Cajon Valley, those kids have so much confidence when they talk to you and they're looking you in the eye and they're telling you, these are my three-letter code. This is my three-letter code, and this is what I'm interested in doing. You
Yeah.
believe them. So,
Yeah, that's super cool because one of the driving entry points that I tend to lead with when I get into school districts and ask, I tend to ask the question, where, what success level are you at, kind of stuff like that. One of the things I will ask is, if we went into a 10th grade math class or a second grade class and we asked the kid, what's their purpose? Would you be able, what would you get for a response? And it's a hard one to answer. As educators, we know the answer, but it's hard to accept what we hear. And you're not hearing that out of students like you talk about at Cajon Valley and where, schools are using this. Tell me a little bit, where's the history? How did you connect to the Hollins Code and the career part of it and the literacy part of it? Give us a little of the history and how we've evolved with Beable.
sure. So the literacy part of it was, back in our Achieve 3000 days, that was literacy at the heart. We just took it to a completely different level by making sure that we have individual pathways for every student and we have different scaffolding based on their specific needs. And the career piece of it came in our conversations with Cajon Valley, with David Machiro, right? It was seeing everything that was happening there and recognizing that for all of that to work at scale for all of our kids, we needed to make sure that we put literacy at the heart. So bringing in the World of Work curriculum that they built and making sure that we built literacy at the heart of all of that to make sure that every kid could have access to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting history of how it evolved. I've had David on my webcast and I've talked to him a lot. He's going to be speaking at our conference in April. Tell us a little bit, go a little deeper even with the literacy part of it, because as I mentioned at the intro, that you're seeing 5 times the increase. So, I mean, that's something to brag about. So I want to hear, the impact, because that's what listeners are going to want to know.
Absolutely.
What's the end result here? What's the impact of Beable on literacy?
Yeah, so as you said, we've seen 5 times expected gains when kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is a minimum of twice a week. But again, every kid has a different pathway, so some kids may need to do more than that. But we've seen some incredible growth, which part of that is because it's interest-based learning. So we're able to push to students lessons that they're most interested in reading about on top of what they're required to read about. So it's not sacrificing what they're required to do. So if they have to do civics, they have a civics curriculum. If they're doing financial literacy, they have that financial literacy curriculum. But on top of that, they can tell us what they're interested in reading about so that they're willing to give us more time. I'm willing to read more time because I'm doing it for the greater good. I'm doing it because I want to reach this goal, but you're also letting me do it based on topics that I want to read about. So that definitely plays into it, as do the scaffolds, because the scaffolds are really helping to make sure that students hone in on the reading skills that they need in order to be successful. So we're filling in the gaps with those extra scaffolds that exist while they're still continuing to do what's being done in the classroom.
Yeah, that's super cool. Give us, I'm sure we're going to have some teachers listening to this and they're going to be scratching their heads. How does that fit into my second grade, third grade, fourth grade class or ninth grade? So give us a little description as to how it fits.
So we're very much customizable to what you're teaching. That's really what our goal is to make sure that it fits with what you're already doing, that we can supplement everything that you're doing with content that will be meaningful and connected to your curriculum, will allow you to bring in the career conversations if you're up to that and you want to bring in those career conversations, but you don't have to right away. And it is seamless. That's really what our goal is that it's a seamless opportunity. And because everybody has a reading curriculum that they use, whether by content or by standards, we're able to make those connections to what you're already doing.
Wow.
So different people will have different courses depending on what their goals and objectives are. So some of our folks are maybe, if you go into middle school, maybe they have a U.S. history curriculum that they want us to implement there. Others may be more career focused and they will have a future readiness course that's developed around world of work and around essential workplace skills, future readiness in general, just making sure I have all the career related skills that I need to be
Yeah.
successful. So again, it very much depends on what the goals and objectives of an implementation are.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like a gold mine for us here in Wisconsin. As we were talking before, we passed, or we have a law, Act 20, that we're in our second year on, and reading is important, obviously.
Totally.
Right. I mean, we talk here literacy and the need, but the application I think is just wonderful. Talk a little bit about kindergarten through what grade, because you do start at pre-K or kindergarten. What level does Beable, where can you start
So,
Beable?
so from a literacy perspective, we generally start in second grade.
Okay.
But for RIASEC and understanding yourself and getting a comfort level with the language, we start down in kindergarten.
Okay.
And that, I know a lot of people will say, what are we doing talking about RIASEC with kids who
Yeah.
are 4 and 5 years old? But they are remarkable and they have so much that they can absorb. And so you will see kids 4 and 5 years old walking around telling you about their 3-letter code and telling you how it connects, what they're most interested in. It's not
Yeah.
the same as what you'll see in middle school and high school, but it's developmentally appropriate for them.
Yeah, I love how you say that because I do get some pushback when I'm in districts and we talk about career readiness at a very young age. And it's not about, right? It's not about saying, hey, you're going to be this, right? The age old, what are you going to be when you grow up? We don't talk like that. It's about awareness and
Yeah.
exposure, right? And allowing kids to be exposed and become aware, right? What it does is it moves their curiosity to even a higher level. And we know that school, kids foreclose on schools, education as early as 9, 10 years old, because the curiosity kind of doesn't allow it to continue. And so I think it's just wonderful. Talk a little bit about, because a lot of us in our states, we're measured by standardized tests. It's definitely in the state of Wisconsin, we have a state report card, it comes out and we're all looking at that. But as far as really measuring progress and measuring,
Yeah.
how does that work in Beable, and how can you showcase that for your educators, but also your community to say, hey, look what we're doing?
Yeah, great question. So we have a partnership with Metametrics, the makers of the Lexile framework. And, it was a conversation with them at the beginning because, as I said, we came out in the pandemic and we knew that there were going to be huge losses from the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we worked with them to develop a fully computer adaptive assessment because we wanted to make sure that we honed in on the most precise low Lexile levels that our kids were exhibiting. But what's unique about the assessment is it's a one-time only event, which means that the first time they come into our system, they take this full assessment. And after that, they take what are called reading challenges, like 3 to 5 questions every month. And that
Yeah.
reestablishes what their Lexile level is. So there are not a lot of big assessments, but we can monitor month to month what their growth is. And the level of content that they receive month to month can get progressively more challenging. And that's how we're able to see the acceleration that we see, because we're not waiting. We're not waiting for the next assessment to come up. We're actually doing every single month little quick challenges so that we make sure that we're working with students at the most precise level.
Yeah. Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Um, because, right, I was a special ed teacher for numerous years. That's where my heart is. Tell me a little bit about the diversity. Are you hitting all students? Are you seeing gains with all students? So we're not creating gaps, we're actually closing gaps. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for students, it's not for non-readers. Non-readers need a different platform to make sure that they develop reading skills. But for us, once a student is minimally reading, we can work with them to accelerate their Lexile scores. And because we have all of these different scaffolds in place, we can work with any student to do that. So English language learners, students of special education, any of them will be able to benefit from the scaffolds and therefore accelerate their Lexile levels.
Yeah, wow.
And as
Wow.
you said, it's not taking them out of what they're already learning. So if they're learning that civics course, all of the scaffolds are around that civics lesson. And it's
Wow.
just making sure that they can participate in the class.
Yeah. Wow, just some great stuff. I mean, you guys are doing some really, really cool things, and I'm glad we were able to connect. All
Yeah.
right, here's the biggest question of all, right? And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you're gonna have a solution to this, but we talk a lot when I go into schools, a lot of the times they will tell us what it is. Give us the what so we can figure out how to go do this, right? So shifting the mindsets is difficult, and being able to cultivate that culture of innovation, I call it, right? So how do we get people, how do we get districts, how do we get district leaders to see, how do we make this shift?
So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, right? You have to give it time. You
Yeah.
can't expect that you're going to walk in and say, okay, we're going to change things tomorrow. But you need visionaries, somebody who can see
Mm,
what the potential is. And somebody who can see that potential, you build from there. And the idea is that it permeates out and you bring in the district level folks first who can help build that vision for everybody. And then slowly, you bring it to your principals, you bring it to your APs, and you make that decision about when it happens. And you make the decision about, well, when do I bring in family members and when do I bring in community members? And for every district, it's going to be a little bit different, right? Because it depends on where your visionaries sit and where their hearts lie. But that's the goal, is to just keep bringing in and layering in more people who can see that CTE and K-12 belong together, right?
yeah.
There's not a separation there. So you want to bring everybody to the table. You want to make sure they all understand, and you want to make sure that everybody feels supported. That's critical, is that they can't feel like, oh, this is another initiative that I have to do that just is another thing. It has to be clear that it's going to drive success in your district. It's going to make your life better. It's going to make it easier. And I'm going to be there for you, and I'm going to show you how that will work.
Yeah, that's some great advice, because it does take time. It's a slow drip. I've recognized that. The work that I actually do with districts is usually over a 2 or 3 year process, and that first year is really where we do a lot of mindset shifting and cultural adjusting and conversation around what we need to be looking at in a visionary concept. So um, let me ask you this. What's happening with Beable in the future? Anything? Or you couldn't stay in what was it, the mountains? That's where you wanted to go.
Oh, and Saki
And
was
I
going
was
to the
saying,
beach. Yeah.
right? And so you were going to do that, and next thing you know, something sparked in the two of your minds, and all of a sudden here comes Beable. Is there anything else that's out there for us to know about?
Well, Beable is a baby still. We're just
Okay.
getting started. There's so much more that we want to do, so much more that we see that can be done, so much that needs to be done to make sure that we help kids overcome the gaps that exist. And we're in it to make sure that we can do that. So we have a roadmap longer than I could possibly describe to you. But
Yeah.
mostly we listen to customers. We listen a lot to what our teachers have to say, what our district folks have to say, because that really drives what we end up doing.
Yeah, that's a good approach, a real good approach. I appreciate you taking the time with us today. I want to just thank you for being with us, but also I want to put a little plug in here in regards to the to our unconference, we're calling it, right? Not your traditional conference in April 29th and 30th. And Beable has agreed to come and be a part of that and help us with David and Aaron and be at the table with us to learn more, to experiment more about Beable and to see what this great program is all about. So for those listeners that haven't maybe signed up yet for our conference, please look into it. And you're going to have an opportunity to engage, interact with the great folks from Beable and to get involved with it. And I'm going to guess there's going to be more interest between now and April based off of this webcast and my newsletter and how we're going to be able to promote this. But I really appreciate you guys getting involved and being a part of that conference.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Yeah. I got one final question for you. I ask everybody the same thing.
Yeah.
So final question is this, our tag is, the future is clear, CCLR, teach like it's 2045, right?
Mhm.
And so what do you feel education, the classroom is going to look like in 2045?
Well, there's no question that AI is going to take on a whole new dimension by then. I think it'll take personalized learning to a whole new level.
Yeah.
The thing I hope that we think about is, through personalized learning, we don't want to lose sight of classroom learning and whole class opportunities. And I also think the whole career-connected literacy that we're talking about now may take on a whole new level by the time we get to 2045, where more learning is taking place in job opportunities, simulations, just a chance to try things out. I think our kids would really benefit from that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Hey, if people would want to get in touch with you or the great platform of Beable, how would they do that?
My email is susan.gertler@beable.com, or you could do info@beable.com. Please reach out. We would love to chat.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, thank you very much, Susan and Beable, for the great support and joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Yep. And as we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care, everybody.